Another method to solve a quadratic is completing the square. With that being said, the whole goal is to get it in one of our special case forms of x minus a squared or x plus a squared. And then after you complete the square, you're going to solve it algebraically. So right now let's talk about what is completing the square. How do we find it? So for instance, let's say that I have x squared minus 8x, and I'm asked to complete the square or to find the square. Well, in order to find the square, we have b over 2 squared. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Well, remember how a quadratic is in the form ax squared plus or minus bx plus or minus c. Well, looking at our problem, a equals 1, b equals -8, and we don't have a c, so it's just 0. So I'm going to complete the square using that -8. So I have -8 over 2. I'm going to square that. Well, we know 8 divided by 2 gives me -4. -4 squared is 16. 16 is the square to that problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into a solving situation. So for instance, x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. My first step is to make sure that a equals 1. In our case, we don't have to worry about this. This is good to go. If, for instance, it doesn't equal 1, you're going to divide everything by the a value. Like I said, in our case, we're good. A is 1. Second step is to have the left side as 1x squared plus or minus your bx equals some number. So for us, we have that 4 attached. So we're going to move that 4 over to the other side. So I now have x squared minus 6x plus, we got to complete our square, that's where our number is going to go, -4 plus our square. Step 3 is then to complete the square. When we're completing our square, you are always adding, and whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So in our case, our b is -6. So we're going to have -6 over 2 squared. So that's really -3 squared, which is 9. And I'm going to plug that 9 into my square spots. Step 4. Step 4 is to factor using special cases the left side. I'm going to call it LS for short. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that this form here, I'm just going to do this in green so you know it's not the same here. This form is x plus or minus your b over 2. squared equals whatever this simplifies down to. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Well, our b over 2 is right here before we actually squared it. So it's this number inside our parentheses there. So we have x minus 3 squared equals, well, what is negative 4 plus 9? Negative 4 plus 9 is 5. So now, at this point, I'm going to solve algebraically. So I'm going to square root this to both sides. So I have x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. I'm going to split this up. I have x minus 3 equals negative square root 5, and x minus 3 equals a positive square root 5. And from here, I'm going to solve for x. So x on the left is 3 minus square root 5. X on the right is 3 plus square root 5. And those are my final answers. So we're going to go through one more. I'm going to follow my steps the same. This time I am going to have an a value that is not 1. So with this example, we have 2x squared minus 9x minus 5 equals 0. So my first step is to divide by the a value. So in our case, I'm going to divide every term by 2. So my new equation is then x squared minus 9 halves x minus 5 halves equals 0. Step 2, I'm going to move it so it's 1x squared plus or minus my bx equals some number. So I'm going to move the 5 halves over to the right. So I now have x squared minus 9 halves x equals a positive 5 halves. I'm going to rework this with the square in there, sorry. Step 3, I'm going to complete the square. Well, okay, my b term is 9 halves. Then I need to divide that by 2 and square it. So 9 halves divided by 2 is 9 over 4, and I need to square that. So when I'm squaring that, it goes 9 squared, which is 81, over 4 squared, which is 16. So I'm going to add 81 over 16 to both sides. So now step 4, I'm going to do my special case factoring. X minus, what was my b over 2? That's always in the step 3. We simplify it first, so it's the middle one. So I have 9 over 4 squared equals, well, I'm going to simplify that 5 halves plus 81 over 16. That gives me 121 over 16. Something as a side note here, notice that when I simplify the right side, I get 2 perfect squares. So I have 121 over 16. Generally, that's what's going to happen with your fractions, is you're most likely going to have a perfect square in the denominator. And same thing with my 9 over 4. I have a perfect square in the denominator there as well. Step 5, I'm going to solve algebraically. So I'm going to square root both sides. I have x minus 9 over 4 equals plus or minus, so what's the square root of 121? That's 11. And what's the square root of 16? That's 4. I'm going to break this up now. X minus 9 over 4 equals a negative 11 over 4. On the right side, I have x minus 9 over 4 equals a positive 11 over 4. I'm going to move that 9 over 4 to the other side to get x by itself. And on the left, x equals negative 1/2. If you have that one as a decimal, it's okay. And on the right side, x equals a positive 5. So we'll keep going through more problems like this. I know this can be a tricky topic. We will get through it.